Uh, this is the Colombia Calling podcast. I'm Richard McColl, episode 560. Seems a bit unreal. Our guest, well, we've got two guests, but one of our guests needs no introduction to any of you. Author Barry Max Wills, that's author of Better Than Cocaine, Learning to Grow Coffee and Live in Colombia. Very successful now, is here on the line. And our editor, as our superstar editor, often don't get enough applause because they're very much behind the scenes. Dan Cross, a British editor based in Colombia. So actually saved my bacon when it comes to actually getting an editor in Colombia who understands Colombia. So we're just going to have a conversation, well, a triumvirate here, a conversation about editing, the writing process, and let's start off, well, with the event this past Wednesday. It was fun, right? The launch party and the conversation.
It was a lot of
It
fun,
was.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I deliberately chose, well, not only a bookshop because it seems like a good place to do it, and an English language bookshop, Bookworm in Bogota, but being nice and small, it was always going to feel full.
Well, it ended up being too small because it was a full house. It was a raging success.
Raging
We had people
success.
standing in the doorways and in the aisles, at
There
least in
were.
the corridors.
Can we also say that the ambassador had to stand?
That's very true,
You know
yeah.
what I missed him? He came in and he obviously was in the board with my book and
Oh,
decided to leave quickly.
well,
He
no,
probably
it
had a
wasn't
reception.
that. He had to be in Meta very early the next morning, so it's another story. But he came.
Very
Oh,
nice of him just to pop
absolutely.
by, yeah.
So I mean, it was an interesting one because I want we talked about. I mean, we were sitting there fielding questions and talking away. Dan, you were very nice there, placing great questions for us, steering the conversation always back to the literary side of things. But it did become a discussion about identity and I would say different cultural nuances quite a lot. And I got worried at some point that it was going to steer too far into politics. It was a Colombian young man who decided to bring politics in. I mean, I was feeling my heart sinking. Anyone else feel that? Was there trepidation there? Barry, maybe you?
Well, I've always got to stop Adriana talking politics with a lot of people that we do business with, etc. There's no politics. Luckily, my Spanish is so terrible that I hear it's starting up and going. No, it was okay, but I mean, inevitably, this is Colombia, and politics is of interest, especially amongst the reading classes, and probably amongst the English-speaking classes. Because remember, they're still very much a minority, and they tend to have an outward focus as well. But I thought it was more interesting, rather than the politics, was that university man who asked, "What's the
Uh,
difference between all the different places, or all the different
mm.
Mhm.
tribes in Colombia, the provinces?"
Yeah, he posed some tough ones there. But did you answer, Dan? Did you answer some of his questions?
Well, I pointed out the fact that I think it's kind of impossible to not have these discussions, especially when we're talking about both of your books, because because I mean the whole nature of them is about being a foreigner living in this beautiful country that we've all adopted,
Mm.
and with that comes clashes of culture, clashes of politics, uh, new ways of looking at how we live our lives, and so these are natural conversations that are gonna happen. But yeah, I think just during the talk, we just tried to keep it as focused on the books as we can. But I mean, we should say the name of your book too, Richard. I know you've been plugging it on Colombia Calling, but congratulations, the Mompos Project is now done. It's out there. It's published, and just like with Barry's, you are both talking about living in these very different parts of Colombia, but both of them have, in their own way, they've both welcomed you into these areas. At the same time, there are challenges and there are traditions that we come up against. But just as we would anywhere,
Yeah.
you move to the north of it. I'm from Devon in the UK, and everyone speaks like a pirate down there. It's we all have our own traditions, we have our views on Londoners and things like that. It's the same everywhere in the world. And
Yeah.
what is nice about your books is it's not shying away from the truths, but it's shining a light, but also celebrating these differences.
And hopefully it's an objective view, because we're not part of all these individual tribes. I was thinking about that. There's a comedy skit, which is this upper class mother in London with two children, and she's got to apologize. Got to apologize because we've got a nanny from the north. Oh my God, what's going to happen?
I saw that one.
I almost ran out of extra virgin olive oil.
I've seen that clip. It's brilliant. And it's all right, you tykes. So she's a Geordie, isn't she? Comes in, and there's the mother blocking them. It's like, it's okay, Tarquin. It's okay, Amelia.
Oh, we're in a strange part of London. We're south of the river. Oh.
What do you mean?
It's true. We're talking about Colombia and the provinces, like the Pastusos. Pasto are different to the Costeños.
Mm-hmm.
And as I mentioned, Adriano, when he first went to Australia in '87, had never seen the sea before, the ocean. The mountain boys had never seen the sea. There was Costeños who had never seen mountains and eat different food. But fortunately, we come from another place and look around, and we have the ability to travel around a bit.
Yeah.
And try and take an objective view of this wonderful place.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about the differences between the regions was being in San Andres many, many years ago, and an Isleño was saying to me, "I've never been to Bogota, but I hear it's so cold that smoke comes out of your mouth." Which I thought was great. It's like sometimes when it's really cold, I remember that smoke does come out of our mouths.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things is, depending on where you are, the shops will only sell one type of clothes, because that's all you need.
Yeah.
You don't need overcoats and jumpers and things like that for winter, because winter's the same as summer. You don't need light shorts and things, because it's always going to be autumn.
But that's it. So we had good academic questions from Andrew, who was at the back there, and he posed a few questions about education as well, and I was very happy to hear Henry May answering those, because he works in education. I mean, I just sort of looked blankly, and I'm very very grateful that someone else stood up and answered that. We had Erin of Coffee Axis Travel from Manizales right up in the corner, who was, I think she was just having a great time.
I think she was.
Yeah.
I think she was. But she also does Expat Temporero, the website and things. And so she is a bit of a influencer. I hate that word. She is a bit of an influencer for English speaking Scotland, not people living here. I'm not an expat. You're not an expat. I don't even like the word expat. But there are an awful lot of people who are expats who are living in the States and all this sort of thing. So, but she tries to spread the word about, and she obviously wanted to come and see your book launch. And she said very nice things.
Yeah, I call myself an inpat, not an expat, an inpat. I mean, we're immigrants to the country. We're full time here. An expat isn't a word that works for us, because it suggests that we work for a multinational, and that we live earning the same wages at a multinational. And you're a coffee baron, Barry, and I'm a freelancer with everything else.
Baron, yes, going. I'm a coffee baron who goes broke when the commodity price goes through the floor.
Yeah, Dan is a freelancer. So we're all three of us. We are not multinationals.
No, far from it.
No, but interesting. And as you say in your book, you're a gringo.
Yeah,
which you're not a gringo, but it means anybody who's not Colombian is a gringo. And I remember being in Otavalo in Ecuador. We'd just gone down for the first time. And there they called anybody who didn't speak Quechua a gringo.
Ah,
It's quite simple. It wasn't just a case of being an American or anything like that.
yeah.
They're different to me, they're from a gringo.
Well, I know. I mean, I'm not. Alba is the first one to correct anyone to say if they say I'm a gringo, and I'm like, it doesn't matter. It
Yeah,
doesn't
I've embraced it
matter.
now. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
but you're a gringo, Barry, there too as well. But they call you El Patron, I'm sure.
Well, I'm Harry and all that sort of stuff, but I'm just a bit of a novelty, really. Adriano's Don Adriano, El Jefe, and all the rest of it. I'm just the big thing that floats around as well.
I missed that last part, Barry. I'm so
Hello?
sorry. I missed the last part. What's the big
Well,
thing?
Adriano is El Jefe and Don Adriano. I'm Don Barry, and I'm really just regarded as the big thing that floats around.
The big thing that floats around. You're the Father Christmas for the Éxito commercials.
Yeah, and I was only ever recognised twice, funnily enough. A couple of 100,000 people saw it because I saw the results. One of them was the boy in Éxito. I was sitting. Adriana was buying presents for the workers for the Christmas do, and I was sitting on a bench with one big trolley. He was getting another one, and this boy, his obviously elder brother, went past, and I'm still sitting there. And he coming back, and this boy goes, "Ho ho ho!" And I said, "Good grief, he's recognised me, Santa Claus."
This is your brushes with fame.
I'm sorry if you're having trouble with my internet connection.
Yeah, a little bit, but that's okay. I'll try and polish this a little bit up. But Dan, I mean, you are the editor. You are our editor, and you've edited also the next book coming up and so on. The next book, hopefully in a few months, but by Andre Gomez Suarez. It's obviously a very different one because it's a Colombian writing in English.
Absolutely,
But it
yeah.
is identity as well. It's a culture and identity book.
It is, yeah. This is it. This is clearly the common theme that your publishing company is shooting for, and I think it's so valuable. I think this actually ties back into what we've discussed a few times in terms of how things are changing in Colombia, because I mean it's happening around the world, but we've gone through a massive period of globalization the last 40, 50 years, and as a result, um, you know, more Colombians now are getting educated overseas. More Colombians, with the help of the internet, people around the world were a bit more savvy of what's going on elsewhere. And all this is playing into young Colombians maybe going abroad for a little while, studying, seeing how things can be different, and then coming back with those ideas, determined to make their country better. And it's wonderful to see, and that is that's quite nice, because then you've got that side of things, and then you've also got looking at the traditions that are still so strong here. Like in your book in Mompos, I'm not going to name any names, but there are certain characters, who are certain determined to keep things as they have always been. While and you mentioned, for instance, how the younger generation are more likely these days to move out, go to Cartagena, go to Barranquilla, maybe even down to Bogota, looking for that education, that career. And what does that do to the culture and to the future? Culture is just key. It's what makes us who we are. And I think that's why, as the editor, I feel so privileged to be able to work on these books. I get to see all your different perspectives. My own journey is one man's journey, and I spend most of my time in Bogota, which is increasingly metropolitan. So to be able to read
Then
your
most of your
stories.
you spend most of your sorry, you spend most of your physical time in Bogota,
I do,
but
yeah.
mentally you're everywhere in Colombia.
Well, that's the beauty of my job is I get to be everywhere and anywhere all at once. And I also edit a lot of fiction as well, so I also get to be in places that don't even exist, which is often better than the real world. So,
Well, I think I mentioned to you on Wednesday because my next book is a novel, and
that's
it's
right.
fiction. I call it fiction because nobody will believe that any of the things in the book happened, and they all did.
Yeah, well, you told me, didn't you? You said everything that happens to the protagonist either happened to you or your partner, but
Well,
you've marketed it as a novel because otherwise they won't believe it.
people just wouldn't believe it. That couldn't happen in Colombia, it can.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's I've already started thinking as there are so many things that I left out, probably by mistake. That I've already got a notepad with things noted down for volume two.
Well,
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 I think
remind us how long volume one took, Richard.
14 years. But
next
listen,
one will be quicker, I'm sure.
So come back in 2039, everyone,
yeah,
for volume two.
in my defense, two children, pandemic which ruined my businesses, and I just couldn't write a word. And also trying to find, an editor an editor and publishing house to do that. That took a long time. I was led along the garden path by a couple, and then dropped. And then, of course, I did a doctorate in between. So I think I was relatively busy.
I'm just hearing excuses,
It was a
Barry, here.
reasonable excuse.
But okay, excuses. But talking about culture and identity, which is a common theme, and it's a theme that I find fascinating. Of course, being a foreigner here. Did either of you get to meet Julia, a German lady who came in with her young baby?
No, I offered her my
Uh,
seat. That was it.
Very kind.
Didn't get to chance at
If you
all.
want to talk about a stranger in a strange land, so she's a German lady who met her Colombian husband from the Llanos in Newcastle, England, at university, and they moved
Wow.
to Edinburgh together.
Oh,
And before
goodness.
then moving back and worked as tour guides in Edinburgh. So there's a
Wow.
German and a Colombian, and then moved back to the Llano and live in Your Pal, and have opened up since for it's now been 10 years or so, one of the most successful like locally operated travel agencies in the Llanos. And so that is a stranger in a strange land, and
Oh,
she's
yeah.
totally immersed. Basically, this young lady from, I can't remember where she's from in Germany, but it's a city, is now a cowgirl. And I was like, write your story. I want
Definitely. Yeah.
that. And
Wow.
I think this was a common theme with those who came, of course, as well, who came to the event. But we missed Adriano, Barry. We missed him showing up unannounced in mismatching socks, and with the artist element.
Oh no, there'd be matching socks, but they'd just be over the top.
We
No,
missed
it
that.
was quite coming down. But as I said, in Colombia, what you expect to happen won't happen when you expect it to. It might not happen at all, but something else will want to be even better.
Yeah,
He was coming
Absolutely.
down, then he couldn't come down, then he will come down, but not on Wednesday.
You did remind him it was the event Wednesday.
Oh yeah, no, he knew it was. I was expecting him probably Monday or something like that.
Okay.
That's why we've got to get the lights fixed for him first and the hot water for the shower. He doesn't like cold showers.
Does anybody like cold showers? I do in the coast. I mean, that's fine. It's always, because it's always above 30 degrees. It's fine. But
It's a bit
in
chilly in
Bogota,
Bogota.
bit chilly in Bogota. I'm a big advocate of piping hot showers here.
Oh, absolutely. Let's just make a shorter shower when it's cold.
That's quite just all right. Well, this is true as well. But Dan, now I know that you write as well. How is that project? Because you've been nominated for prizes and so on, but these are different works of fiction.
Yeah, I got into the industry by writing historical fiction. And I was very fortunate and covering a whole range of eras. Um, and I suppose there bears some similarity to what we've been talking about, because my what always draws me is the human story, strangers in a strange land, as we've said, and often basing it on real people, just to try and shine a light on fascinating stories of people that maybe have been overlooked recently. But yeah, and I had some good early success in both. I've written three novels, and the first two were both shortlisted for the Wilbur Smith Adventure Writing Award in 2018 and
Fantastic. Well
2020.
done. I didn't know that.
There you
Oh,
go.
okay.
There you
Yeah,
go.
well, yeah. We learned something new. But yeah, it's and I did get an agent through that, but it's just never really gone any further than that. And while I was writing these books, I figured, well, I've got to, pay some bills in the meantime. I'm going to make some money. But I want to work with books. So I started my business, and I started working with authors all over the world, English language authors. And it's very much my calling. I said to my wife, she always asks me like, "Oh, are you still writing?" I'm like, "Well, occasionally, but I just love editing so much more." Which is, I think, quite shocking for a lot of writers, because I think most of them hate the editing process, but then that's good because it.
I hate the writing process.
Really.
There are moments when I'm just like, good God.
I love finishing something.
Yeah.
And that's my advice when younger writers, for whatever reason, because they've lost their minds, ask me for advice. I say, first, finish something.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Then go back and make it better. And you know.
I've
But
got a.
the other problem for you is you probably respect other people's deadlines more than yours.
Mm.
Yeah, we could talk about that, couldn't we, Richard? Sending me the Mompos project with about a month to go before publication date.
Yeah, I knew. I figured that because I think after all my excuses, it's just been one of those things of just not wanting. I think subconsciously not wanting to finish.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine, like, yeah, the pressure you put on yourself after so many years. But
Yeah, well, let's say the
you-
pressure being leaned upon me gently by my very understanding wife.
Similarly, I think you took my deadlines more seriously that you were
Yeah.
putting on me than you put on yourself.
Oh yeah.
Because we can always change the things we set for ourselves. But when you commit to something, whether it
yeah,
be providing something or demanding something, you've got to hit it. Otherwise, we're not professionals.
True.
absolutely.
True.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And actually, now that you say that, I think that is something that I quite like about editing. I am, I don't think I'm your typical artistic person when it comes to creative writing, because I am very, there's pantsers, there's planners, and then there's me. I go very obsessively into the detail, and I like to have my timetables. I like to have all that stuff sorted out. And sometimes creative writing is at its best when um, you take the training wheels off a little bit and you just allow yourself to go wild. And I can struggle with that sometimes. So with editing, it's much more, okay, here's the checklist of things we need to do. There's still room for creativity, which is why I love it. There's, for instance, if I'm
Oxford comma or not?
Oh yeah.
yeah, well
None.
that's a bit more black and white, which I like. But also there's a where the art kind of comes into it is, I feel I have a very deep responsibility to respect the author's voice, how they're writing, the style, how their humor comes across, things like that. And so if I have to, tweak certain sentences, it's okay, but how do we do that while, keeping everything, we don't want this to stand out that someone else has, reworded this. So there's a nice mix of following that sort of set list of things that need covering, but also getting a bit creative.
I thought,
So
I thought,
yeah.
I thought you were brilliant, personally.
Oh, thank
And
you.
I know, well, you knew all the technical stuff, which I don't, etc., and you made it all look much better. But the thing that interested me also was that you're culturally sensitive to what we're writing about and where it's going to come out.
Mm.
And one of the things I always remember and asked you was for Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
And I said there was a bunch of businessmen walking towards a restaurant in '93 to have a Halloween lunch, and they were dressed as pirates, ghosts, monsters, Arabs, and then you took out Arabs. And I said, "Oh, why'd you do that?" He said, "Because people might be sensitive about suggesting that an Arab should be out on Halloween," which I thought was clever.
Yeah, and it's a funny one, that it's a fine line to walk, really, because obviously what some people find offensive and sensitive, other people don't, and other people, think it's silly that, something should have to be censored for any kind of reason. And that's where it just becomes a conversation between myself, Richard, yourself, about what we think the audience is prepared to, where is their line? So yeah.
Or whether it makes sense for them or not too. And another bit,
yeah,
when Mafaluchis and Pisperispis came to Mykonos,
mm-hmm.
and I said, and I was talking about the dynamics of it, and I compared it to Downton Abbey, and he took that out because the people are not going to remember Downton Abbey, but you left in Torsolino and Mafaluchis was a bit like Tom Cruise in love with Nicole Kidman.
Right,
so
yeah.
I'm assuming everyone will remember that, but they're not going to remember a television show.
Mm-hmm.
The mention of the Arabs I found interesting because it didn't even register. I didn't even register. Yeah, and then when it was brought up, I was like, yeah, probably. Barry, could you imagine you could have been a part of the victim of cancel culture?
Or a fat one.
It's one of these things, because I can also imagine, for instance, there are listeners to your podcast right now who wouldn't agree that needs taking out, and I almost agree, but it's what part of the balance you have to get right with editing is thinking is what you talk about. It's that trade-off between what could the potential trouble be, and is it worth it for this one mention? So in the case of this particular example, it's mentioned in a long list of other costumes that people are using on Halloween. So you've made the point. And it's like, okay, well, rather than risk that one-star review on Amazon or whatever, let's just get rid of that, and then everyone kind of stays relatively happy.
It's not missed.
It's not missed.
Exactly.
It's not missed.
Exactly.
Because there's so much other.
I wouldn't know the start with. No, I remember I've got a friend who in Australia and referred to me once on Facebook as an old buff, and I said, "Paul, I object strongly. I am not old."
Yeah, it is perfect. What do you think about my friend? Going back to the event, my friend Paola was there, and Colombian who lived in London quite some time. I think she worked at the consulate or something like that, Colombian consulate. But I liked her final where we ended the conversation. And it's like, she's like, when we were talking about Colombian culture, she's like, at the end of it, we just don't give a shit. I've thought about that quite a lot, and I think I don't know if it's right, but I liked it, and I liked it as a place to stop. With all the years, obviously between us here, quite. If we were to put them all together, it's I don't even want to think about it. But do you feel that, Barry? Maybe do you think Colombians sometimes just don't give a shit?
Colombians don't give a shit. No, I'm a bit confused. Colombians don't give a shit, or we don't give a shit about
Colombians don't give a shit. I mean, because she was kind of sort of putting it into context about we'll park where we want, we'll do what we want, we'll turn up our music like we want. Yeah.
I don't know whether it's a case of don't give a shit or just what they're used to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a case of I don't care if I offend you. It's a case of we always live like that. Mm-hmm. We always have our music loud. And the people next door always have their music loud. We don't mind that either.
Yeah.
They're not trying to piss us off. We're not trying to piss them off. It's just how we live.
Yeah. I think you might be right. And Dan, in the years you've been here, what do you feel about that comment?
Well, it's certainly true of driving.
That's another story.
Well, I have seen someone giving advice that is expat or whatever to a new one. He said, "Look, don't worry, cross the double lines, go over the speed limit, because otherwise you're going to cause an accident."
Yeah. Yeah.
That said, I crossed double lines and got pulled over by the police who I could tell they wanted a bribe because they weren't typing it in.
Opportunity.
Yeah, and then actually Kevin, our mutual friend, was in the car, and we were stopped, and I could see he was like it was one of the before they automated everything. He was sort of playing with the pen, and I said, "Oh yeah," and he goes, "You can't do that." And I saw it. That's lunchtime. He wants his lunch. You can't do that. That's illegal in Colombia. But my response, and I've said it here before a few times, is my response was, "Well, in my country, we drive on that side of the road." And he just found it so funny that I was let go.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, there you go. It was a spur of the moment thing. But I think more than not giving a shit, I think, Barry, you hit the nail on the head there. I think it's just the way it's always been done. Yeah.
They don't think about it. They're not annoying you. They're just being Colombians.
Yeah, this is true. This is
They
true.
wouldn't object to you playing loud music either.
Well, they would, because I would blare 70s punk.
Playing the wrong music.
Yeah. It would, because it wouldn't be the music they want to listen to. It wouldn't be the vallenato and the accordion heavy vallenato. Yeah, it's kind of like you take a Parisian accordion and then drop several tabs of speed.
I've had a few people here say to me, I've explained to them that I'm quite a light sleeper, and that I like to be in a quiet neighborhood and things like that, and they're like, "What are you doing in Colombia?"
Yeah, that's true.
Exactly.
Well, I have to say, I'll cut this bit out, but I don't have professional Zoom anymore, so we've only got 4 minutes left before they cut us off. So maybe we could do a quick summation. But Dan, if people are looking for an editor, and I know you've got a lot of work, but more work is always welcome. How do people find you?
I've got a website, openbookeditor.com, and it's kind of does what it says on the tin. I'm very much about being an open book. I like to be transparent, so all of the details of the services I offer are on there. There's a bit about me, lots of testimonials, and all my prices are up there as well. And you can contact me and then just ask any questions, ask away, no problem whatsoever.
So I must write you another testimonial.
Oh, yes, please. Yeah.
Yeah. So Barry, have you written a testimonial?
I certainly have.
Oh,
He
very
has,
good,
yes.
very good. Barry, we can look up all your stuff on Letters from Bogota, Letters from Colombia.
Lettersfromcolombia.com. Well, that's what the book is made. Well, I've only got about 10 or 15 or 10 or 12 years on that. But yes, and people can send messages if they want to and all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
But I'm just so honored to be here with my publisher and my editor, because I think you're such a talented mob. I'm interested what both of you have to say about this new book.
Have you received it, Dan?
Which book?
The new one.
By Barry?
Yeah, I haven't read it yet. I've had it in there.
No, he's still writing it. He's still writing. He just mentioned it to me the other night.
Okay. So we're on there.
But where can people buy the Mompos Project?
At the moment, it's an ebook online on Amazon, but it will be in all good Bogota bookshops before long. But obviously, Bookworm, where we had the event, but we'll be in the Fondo de Cultura Económica before long, where downtown Candelaria in Bogota. And of course, I'm still working on how to get us into the international bookstores, which is it's another struggle, but we will do it. We will do it. And I hope to go to London this summer after a long absence, and be able to talk to independent bookshops and get us in there.
Well, the thing is, both of these books are very interesting, more to English speakers who are outside of Colombia than Colombians. That's the thing, because we're extending the view and the understanding of this wonderful country.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Well, that's the idea. It's not just championing our books, it's championing Colombia. And that's it. And both books at the end are our love letters to the country. It really is.
Exactly. Proving that Colombia is much better than cocaine.
Coffee's better than cocaine. Colombia's better than cocaine. Colombia does not deserve to be, well, I mean, it's always going to be compared with cocaine. But I had a nice meeting with a lady from a travel agency yesterday, and she's just like, I can't believe how amazing this country is. So there you go. There you go. Well,
when we first came here, there was no Department of Tourism whatsoever.
Oh, no.
Because there were no
tourists. Well, we're going to have to bring this to a close because, again, as I say, we don't have enough time, unfortunately. But it's a nice episode, a nice conversational episode for all of us here out there in the Colombia Calling podcast. Thank you, of course, Dan Cross, editor-in-chief, editor espectacular, openbookeditor.com. Please check it out. Very, very reasonable prices as well. But don't give him too much work because he'll have to obviously increase his prices and then he'll price me out of the market. Barry Max Wills, author of Better Than Cocaine, Learning to Grow Coffee and Live in Colombia. Myself, Richard McColl, the host of the Colombia Calling podcast. We've been here and